literally the whole frame of the TV was his face walking by. Um, but yeah, I did that. Um, but like the most recent thing that I've done um, is I went through the improv program
Okay.
at Second City in Hollywood.
Okay.
Um,
Can you let people know who might not know what Second City is? or-
yes, I will. Well, the actual so the term Second City or the Second City is Chicago, and that was deemed the Second City because it was like there was New York, but it was like another kind of port town,
Uh-huh.
right? So like it was deemed the Second City. And unfortunately, I don't know who started it, but so the Second City School, and now I don't even want to say it's improv because they teach improv, directing, writing, voiceover, stand up. I mean, just about everything.
Yeah.
But I believe it originated. I know that it originated in Chicago. Then the campus in Toronto. And there was an old show in the 70s called SCTV, which stood for Second City Television.
Cool.
And that had people like John Candy was on there. I think Rick Moranis. If I'm not mistaken, the two Canadians, and this was all from, I believe, the Toronto Second City campus. The show and everything. But oh my gosh, Rick Moranis and the other guy who were like, "Hey, I'm gonna steamroller you, Strange Brew," much like Blues Brothers came from Saturday Night Live. I believe that movie Strange Brew came from the characters that were created on SCTV.
Cool.
Or at least Second City itself, like because all these and then they opened one in Hollywood, and all of these training centers have stages,
Which
so like
makes sense.
yeah,
That makes sense.
and when you say Second City, so almost well for a long time, probably up until the 2010s. And maybe even 2000, up until 2000, the majority of anybody who was on Saturday Night Live had come from Second City. Like
Yeah.
the original
Facts.
cast, I think, I don't think Steve Martin went through Second City.
Dan Aykroyd did, though, right?
But, Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, Bill Murray, and they were all Chicago though.
Yeah, Chicago
and Toronto, because like a lot of like John Candy's Canadian, Harold
I
Ramis.
never knew he was Canadian. Wow.
Oh no,
John Candy, yeah, no.
and I think Dan Aykroyd too.
Is Canadian?
I believe so.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it.
I think, but he spent a lot of time in Chicago. I don't know.
Yeah.
He might be. Because
Might
I
be
know
a drifter.
Bill Murray's straight Chicago.
He might be a drifter.
Yeah, you know what? Like, maybe edit that because I don't know. I don't want to speak out of class, but Tina Fey went there, but then
Did Amy Poehler go there or no?
no.
Oh.
But Amy Poehler is one of the people that started what is known as the Groundlings. Which the Groundlings. Oh no, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
He caught himself. At least you caught yourself.
She started UCB, the Upright Citizens Brigade.
Okay.
Brigade. Excuse me, which is also a training center, but it's the same thing. It's in both, and then there is the Groundlings, and all of these places. What they do and kind of what Saturday Night Live does to an extent is all of these places do like improv to sketch, which means they'll have an idea so improv isn't necessarily like, hey, folks, give me a location and we'll just make up a scene.
Mm-hmm.
That is improv,
Yes.
granted.
Yes.
But also, improv is like having an idea, like, oh, what if, like, what if you and I were brothers that had never met?
Okay.
How would that go? Boom. And then, like, we go out on, like, but, you have this secret and, whatever.
Let's improv a scene. Yeah. Let's do it. A quick one.
Well, I can't at the moment.
He wasn't ready for it. He wasn't ready for it.
No, I'm not, honestly.
Okay, let's continue.
But yeah, so but you have an idea, like, Key and Peele, right? Key and Peele, we had a show on Comedy Central called Key and Peele. Mm-hmm. But that show actually started at Second City, and I believe Second City Hollywood. They had an idea for this sketch show that also, like, they had these ideas and they would improv them, but then they would turn them into sketches, and they put that show on. That's like an example of what Second City is. And
cool.
And also, so like, and then so okay, and in about 2010 is when I first started going to Second City, and like up until then too, I had been kind of like complacent. I had gathered, I had taken some classes, I had gathered some skills. I knew I got the techniques down to really be able to perform well. But I would fall into complacency, whereas like, oh, these people will give me like 3 shows a year and I don't have to like work for it. So like I'll do theirs and I'll, I stopped really like pursuing, getting paid for it or whatever, or like really, really bottom line, like challenging myself, and
you stopped challenging yourself at a point.
Yeah. Like I was like, these people will, like I said, give me like 3 shows a year. And outside of that, I don't really, like I get to do it. I get to like exercise that part, and I was like happy, but I wasn't being, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't challenging myself. I mean, there would be like, oh, I'd never heard of this show, or so I don't know this character, so that, this is, there'd be like challenging roles, but, but I could still get over that rather quickly.
Yeah, easily.
And it was all local, so it was like, the pond never changed, and I was still like kind of where I grew up, what I mean? So like I really knew the pond. And then, excuse me, my brother-in-law was staying with us during Christmas, and he got me like a gift certificate for a class at Second City Hollywood.
Cool.
And it was like, I signed up for Improv 1.
Talk about someone that knows you.
Yeah. And well, well, I'll save that for the end. But, so I was like, oh, improv, I had like all the major misconceptions of improv, right? It was terrifying, for one, because what I thought and what I feel in talking to people, like I can almost say like I know that, most people think improv is just thinking super quickly and having like the funniest joke to just spit out for any situation, and as the situation changes, you got the next funny thing, and it's all who can think the fastest, and like that, when in essence, like, improv is like, is this group mind listening to each other.
Yep, there it is.
And just having, like, when you're really doing improv, you're just having a conversation, right? You're just talking to the other people on stage, and you all have the thought, whether it's like the suggestion is an apple, right? You know, somebody says apple, you might not all have, if it's 4 people on stage, or if it's us 2, somebody says apple and it's you and I on stage. Mm-hmm. And, you might be thinking of the company and I might be thinking of the fruit.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, oh, okay. And it's all in who speaks first. Right.
And then,
and it's just a conversation, So I could be thinking apple and you're like, oh man, I stood in line for 6 hours at the new, to just get my new iPhone 72,
Yeah, it didn't
and
work.
like immediately my fruit switches to like the apple, and that's just because I'm listening to you,
Yep.
and like, so then, oh man, it's just organic conversations.
Facts.
And that's what I didn't get. And like, I don't want to reveal too much of the class, because I think there's even, they don't like that. But like, so I went out, right, for my first class, and really like the first class you take is really just getting you to like let go and trust the other people in the class, that you can say whatever, as long as it's, not like, nope, that's not what happened, or so, but you can say something outlandish because, the pause has been going on too long, or like, for whatever reason, something snapped, you just say something ridiculous, but like everybody else, like, will like, accept that ridiculousness. And here is how we justify that ridiculousness. Because, that's what we do here and whatever, But I went for that first class and like, I didn't volunteer for anything, I was really timid, and I was scared, I was confident all the way down. And then, so it's on Sunset Boulevard. No, I'm sorry. It's on Hollywood Boulevard. Mm-hmm. And it's on the second floor. Everything's on the second floor. And as you're going up the steps, it's a narrow staircase. And to your right, as you're going up, is all of the alumni from previous years. And they go... and it's like into the 90s and into the 80s, right? And it's like a yearbook. And you're looking at, Tina Fey. You're looking at Jimmy Fallon, Horatio Sands. You're looking at, all these people that you've been watching. Yeah. And then you turn the corner and the hallway itself is full of these giant pictures of like, the stage, and like all these famous people like on the stage doing like what you're about to do, pretty Michael Myers, or Mike Myers.
His new show is kind of very interesting. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
No, I really want to though. The one on Netflix about the
Secret Society.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and you know where that comes from, right?
No.
So also in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, was a movie called So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Oh, one of his first movies.
Yes, okay. It is. It's very funny, but it's got a lot of heart. It's a very cool romantic comedy.
Yeah.
Within it, his dad, who he plays his dad, and he's like kind of all wrinkled and he's Scottish, but that's one of the things that he says that there's like that, because he says he hates the Colonel.
Okay.
from KFC, because he
Hilarious.
says he's one of the 5 people that meet triannually to discuss like every issue in the world.
Okay.
So yeah, that's where that comes from.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I hardly did anything in that first class, and but so I'm sorry. So you get to the top of the steps, you turn, and then there's these giant, giant photos of things that they've done on stage, and there's one in particular where it's like an old Oldsmobile or an old like Buick, from like the 70s.
Yeah.
And the trunk is popped, and I believe it's Gilda Radner. I think Jane Curtin are sitting in the car, in the trunk of the car. John Candy and Dan Aykroyd are both standing outside of the trunk of the car, for the person taking the picture.
Yeah.
And I mean, they look like they're probably, very early 20s.
Early 20s for sure.
Very, very
For
early
sure.
20s. John Candy is like healthy looking.
Facts.
Not he's not very big.
Is Chris Farley a Second City person too, or no?
Yes.
He is?
And
Okay.
there's pictures of him and Tim Meadows,
Okay.
like doing a scene on the stage, like one of those giant pictures in the
Yeah.
hallway. And, and that's before I'm about to walk into like my very first class, and like all that flooded in was like, oh man, this pond is
Much bigger.
is way bigger. And then
Yeah.
I sat down, and like I said, this is 2010, so I'm like,
This is 18 years after the
Yeah.
92.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So it's a whole nother cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I would have been
Age is not
30.
going.
But I mean, I was like, mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I sat down, and like everybody to my right is like at least 10 years younger than me,
Got you.
And it's like, ooh, and they're all like, oh yeah, I work as a PA for this, or like, oh yeah, I got like, they're like doing stuff within the industry
Already.
that also too, like a lot of things that they're doing, like, not a lot, but like there's things that some of the people are doing that like it didn't even exist a few years ago. It's like a web series is doing this, and they're paying me. You know what I mean? But like it just seemed like more people were connected. And
With the
it was
industry.
like, so like I kind of, that whole first class, I just shrunk.
God, you got a little intimidated.
Yeah. And then so I'm driving home, and it's like, I'll admit, I'll get vulnerable. That whole way home, I was so upset with myself that I was crying on the way home.
Okay.
That like, you got this as a gift. Somebody like, thought enough of you that, this is just like, you're wasting it. This is just a way, if you're not going to do anything, like, and also what is going to happen, these are the lowest stakes. You've paid to be here, like if you're not going to do anything, there's like,
Why are you
so
here?
the next, from then on, from like my second class, like as soon as they said like my hand went up anytime they wanted to or like I stepped forward anytime, they wanted to volunteer. You
Nice.
want to volunteer? Like, yeah, I'll volunteer. And like, and then, or if I didn't volunteer, whatever the exercise was, like taking everything and trying to do it, use it as training,
Yeah,
like
100%.
for what it's for. And that like, so I ended up, so what they do is you have improv levels 1 through 5, right? And each one builds on the different aspects. And then once you do that, then you can audition for conservatory. And then conservatory has 3 levels where the first is just kind of a review of everything. that you did.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that, you get like your group, like your improv troupe.
Okay.
Then the next phase is basically building an hour-long show. And the way it worked out for our group is there was 6 of us, and we each got basically 2 scenes. And then we had like an intro and an outro.
Okay.
And you got to cast and you got to direct your scenes.
Oh, awesome. Even better.
Right?
Even better.
And so you can, although what I did is in both of the scenes that I wrote, I was like kind of the straight man and like let all the jokes and let all the like good like shock moments happen with other people.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
But I still like, even within that, I had like this genie scene where like when the genie was getting laughs, like that's what I wrote, you know? So I was still getting a lot of joy because I'm like, I wrote that, you know?
Doing that,
and it was
yeah.
like, and I just really, but, you know, so I went through like, you know, all of it. And that time, and then once, you know, the procedure was over, but like all of that was like so enriching because it showed me that like too, this whole like thing of acting, right? This whole like, I mean, not career, not hobby, like, but just the act of acting.
Yeah. The love of acting.
The love of acting, but like acting in and of itself can be done in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And needs so little to be done, you know, because like improv is acting.
Oh, 100%.
You know,
100%,
whatever you're doing up
100%.
there, you're not saying your ideas, you know, you're not, you know, but like the greatest thing about it to me is that like for the first time, I was like open to the concept and open to the world of like acting itself being alive, right? Like a moment ago, you know, when I was like, you know, you could have, you know, a computer and I can have a fruit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's like prenatal or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you say, like, you stood in line, right? That is something, like, you already started acting. You made up something. You made up a scenario that you did. And so a scene has just begun, and there's absolutely no way anyone in the world could possibly tell you where this is going to end.
Yeah. Or where we're going next.
You know, or where we're going next.
Yeah.
Or what this is even going to be about. Because it could start out about, you know, the line that you stood in, and it can very much end up like, you know, the downfall of corporate America. Or it could end with dairy cows, you know.
Anything. It could be anything.
Exactly. And it's, you know, it's alive, and it could be, you know, and it could be great, and it could fizzle out and not be much, you know.
Very true.
But also within that, the license to make mistakes, you know, that never existed, you know.
Yeah, no fear.
Because exactly there, you know, like when you go out, you know, when you're in a play, you know, you go out, you've rehearsed for months so that you say everything a very certain way, and you walk to a certain spot. And there really is, you know, no room for error because other people are also counting on you to be in that exact spot, or to, you know, although when you do a show for like a long time, it is kind of cool. You know, I mean, this is kind of a whole side thing, but like no character is really ever finished. You know, if you're doing something, you always find little ways to be like, oh man, you know, he would maybe do this.
Yeah,
actually, you know, yeah, like if you go and see any show opening and then closing night, you will definitely see a different show.
100%.
You know,
100%.
And that's, you know, that's really cool. So like theater is always kind of alive, you know, when you're doing it.
Facts.
You know, except of course film, and I think we got into that last time.
So I wanted to mention something about the improv, which the biggest key thing, and I guess what I've heard it from other people too, is that people get in their own head and they don't listen and react to listening to what the person is saying. And that's one of the key things I caught you saying a lot, is that I'm responding to what the other person is saying.
Right. And yes, that to me, and from what I've seen, that is probably the biggest thing. And it goes back to what I said in the very beginning, is most people think, you know, like everything's a competition. And in improv, the majority of people that haven't done it, you know, or that don't know, think that like the funniest, the line that you say that gets the most laughs is the one that wins the scene. You know, like, you know, oh, that one's mine. You know, I really, did you hear how I got them laughing and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Whereas,
well, everyone wants to be the star.
Yeah, you know, exactly. But like, and so a lot of times, yeah, that's like the thing that people fall into, is like, while the scene's going on, they're trying to think of like, you know, or one of two ways. The one thing that's very dangerous is some people will get an idea, like I said, like I had fruit and you had a computer, you know, the company, Apple.
Yep.
And you said, oh, I stood in line for this, right? There's a lot of people that like, no, I had fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know, you would say, you know, oh, I stood in line for like, 15 hours yesterday just to get the iPhone 72, right? So
yeah,
what that would be is you just gifted the scene of like, you know, you're tired, you just, oh, you have the iPhone 72, oh shit, you know, just to spring off anything that you've just said.
Facts.
Right?
Facts.
Right?
Yep.
But, you know, there's people that are like, oh, have you tried this apple? Like, it's a new apple that like, okay. And it doesn't like, you know, the scene just crashed, you know, like, no, I haven't tried your apple, you know? And there are people that do that. Like they'll get an idea and they won't want to move past it, or, you know, or they have something really funny about an apple. And if yeah, like they're thinking like, you know, 3 sentences ahead, and they're trying to get you, no, just say this, and then we'll get there, you know?
Yep.
Or they're like, you know, you say that about the thing, and they're like, okay, how can I, you know, what's funny about that, you know? Like, 15 hours, huh? Did you pee your pants? You know, like trying to think of something that will get a laugh
immediately.
You know, instead of just like,